Hi, you are now watching my 8th game in the Norwegian Chess Championship 2010 Class 4, and my opponent is Audun Hoem from the chess club Kristiansund. He has 1095 in rating. One evening during the chess tournament there is a 5-minute Blitz championship, and we met twice during that event last year. I lost both Blitz games. And even though Blitz and tournament chess are two completely different things, he does have a psychological advantage. In one respect, you could say that I really don't want him as an opponent, but if there is anyone in Class 4 that I would like to meet and win against, it is him, Audun Hoem. With this pawn move to f4, I'm seeing the beginning of an attack here against my castle position. He has his 2 pawns here, which will be able to dislodge my knight on f6. He has 2 knights already established in the center. His 2 bishops are pointing towards my castle position. His queen can come out and move to h5 after the knight is dislodged. And he has a rook lift here from the f-file and towards the h-file if he chooses to. I'm not going to let him do all this, of course, but he does have good development. Now, I have become a little more aggressive in my last games, and I'm going to gamble a little and hope I am lucky, because I want to take some of the momentum out of his attack, and I want to do that by taking this pawn here on e4. First of all, I need to gain a tempo on his bishop, and he has a few choices as to where to place his bishop now. If he moves it to d5, I'll just push my pawn up here on c7 to c6. And he can't put his bishop here on b3, because if he does, then I gain a tempo on his knight, which has to move. And then his bishop is trapped here, and I gain a bishop for a pawn. And my luck hasn't run out, because he moves his bishop to e2. Now, if he had moved to d3, he would have his bishop protecting his pawn here on e4. And my position is still sound. But with my next move, I actually dislodge his knight here. And this e4 pawn has no protection. Now, as far as I know, this is not recommended, because the queen side is not actually looking that good. But I'm hoping to hold on to this pawn here. And if you're wondering why he cannot take my pawn on b4 with his knight here, it's because I can fork his 2 knights. Now, I have to be very careful, because he still has all the pieces needed to mount an attack against my castle position. And with his queen here, he has a surprise move in store for me. If I move one of my pieces here, I'll move my rook here to e8. But the move he has here is a check. And I have a rook here which is not defended and can be taken by his queen here. But in this situation where I moved my rook, it'll almost even out. So I take his knight and then block his entrance here towards the a8 square. And right now he has a checkmate on me right here. I'm not sure, but pawn to f5 might actually have opened my position more. But he decides to put his queen behind his pawn, possibly to push it further up. But now I block it. He checks me, and instead of moving my king to h8, I decide to move it to g7, a little closer to the center of the board here. During analysis, he told me that his plan here was to move his bishop in here and have a straight line towards my king. I see that and put my bishop here on f6 with a direct line towards his rook here if his knight moves. And I'm just pressing his pieces a little further back on the board. And now I have time to protect my b4 pawn. Because of my pawn capture in the beginning of the game, my rook and knight here have been stuck. And right now I want to get my knight into action, hoping to place it up here on e4. But he wants to trade, and I do not want him to dominate the e file. I am guessing that he wants to fight for the e file and wants his rook here on e1. And before that happens, I want to have my rooks connected. But his next move throws me a little bit off, because he moves his pawn here to c4. I could take it en passant with my b4 pawn, but if I do so, I'll get an isolated pawn here and a few pawn islands. And if I take his pawn with my d5 pawn, then his rook here is pointing directly towards my queen. But I have a plan of my own, and I move to c5. My opponent uses at least 20 minutes of his time here on this move, and decides to move his knight here to b5. And I'm actually using 20 minutes of my time on deciding whether or not to take his knight. And the reason for all this is the following. If he takes here now on d5 with his rook, and I protect it with my bishop here, this is a possible scenario, and I can't really see further ahead than this. I know that I'll get his bishop here because of the check, but I'm really not sure at all. And I'm very curious as to whether he will take this pawn here with his rook, or take my bishop. And he decides to take my bishop, and he gets a pawn here which has no enemy pawns towards promotion towards a possible queen. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a plan of my own, and with his knight off the board I can pin his rook against his king, and I'll be ahead. And he decides to take my bishop with his rook. And as the situation is right now, I feel that I want most pieces off the board. I want to trade queens, and I move my queen to e8 to challenge him to the e file, and at the same time threaten his pawn here on b5. And as long as he doesn't want to trade queens, I believe his correct move would have been to place his queen here on d2, where I cannot check him and let go of this b5 pawn. Instead, he moves his queen to d3, protecting his b5 pawn, and I check him. The only way to get out of check is to trade queens, and I get my wish. Now I need to get my king to c6 to block his pawn, and then my bishop can roam freely. Now I have to be very careful now, because if I move my king here to d6, I'll get a check, and he'll get my rook here. He is preventing me from reaching the back rank, and I believe this was a bad move, because right now I can move my pawn to d4 and block his protection from b6. Now he could have taken my pawn, but during analysis he said he didn't want to do that, because with this d pawn where it is, it would be more difficult for me to get behind in his position. And I'm not really getting anywhere here, so I need to make a break on the queen side. And right now I am mostly inside his position. As long as his king stays and protects the a pawn, I'll have free access here with my king to push this d pawn up. And after a very long time he decides to give up in this position.